two other scriptures that I want to cite, and then I'll talk about them. The first is also in Romans 10:1. Paul says, "Brethren, my heart's desire, my prayer to God for them," that is for Israel, "is their salvation. For I testify that they have a zeal for God, but it's not according to knowledge. For not knowing about God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of God." So Paul would, so the Israel that I believe Paul is talking about are those that he would talk about in Romans 2:12, those who are in the Torah. That means these are Jews that I would say Paul believes they believe in what we call the Old Testament, right? They believe in the Tanakh, and so they have a canon that is true, but precisely as Paul teaches us here. So their zeal for God is according to the canon.
Right.
However, they are blind to God's righteousness. Therefore, they are not convicted of their own sin. That they're not convicted of their desperate need, right? Their total depravity. They're not convicted of their depravity. So they have the right canon, and they have zeal for the right God, but they lack the ruach, right? Okay, so but the second verse I want to go to is John 4, where Yeshua is talking to the Samaritan woman. So the Samaritans have a Pentateuch, so they're what we would call Mosaic covenantal community. You know what I mean? Just in descriptive purposes, but they reject Jerusalem. That means they reject David, Solomon. They reject all the prophets.
Right.
And so they have, and they've modified their Pentateuch. So what has Yeshua said? Because she's saying, well, you guys say you're supposed to worship in Jerusalem, but we worship here, this sort of thing. In John 4:22, Yeshua says, you guys worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is ekton Judaion. It is of the Judeans or of the Jews. I believe what Yeshua is saying there is, you guys have, you Samaritans have it's a different, it's not the same thing that Paul's talking about in Romans 10. You guys have a canon problem, right? Like you need more, you need a different kind of chiropractic care
adjustment
than the Pharisees do. You both need a chiropractor, but the you know what I mean? It's much more dire of a situation for the Samaritans. Now, I would say that Paul, if we were to be able to interview Paul, or Yeshua for that matter, I mean, but just Paul, because he's talking about those who have a zeal for God, I don't think he's talking about the Essenes. I think Paul would say the Essenes, they asserted a different calendar. They had jubilees. He would say they worship a different God. I think Paul would probably not hesitate to say they are more like the Samaritans. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you worship. So I would say Yeshua and Paul would say to the Essenes the same thing that Yeshua says to the Samaritan woman. You don't know what you're doing. Whereas to Pharisees who hold to a canon, he would say, you have a zeal for God, but it's you're blind to the righteousness of God. So that's how I would parse that out. But what complicates it back to the contemporary day, where we see, from the Middle Ages, the praying at the graves of those considered the Jewish righteous sages, that is where I'm more like, yeah, it's a different God. Like it went once the Babylonian Talmud becomes the main kind of book of Judaism, and then the Kabbalists build up it's a different God, right? It is very different. So I guess my answer is a big depends upon, and I would say depends upon time and place.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell us your thoughts on this subject by leaving a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and enable those notifications. And we'll see you in the next video.